I'm just going to speak for all of us.
How successfully we're living life, or I think they're inaccurate.
How do you coach somebody who's the best in the world at something to be better?
And some of that is mentally they've changed. But some people think, well, that's your brain. You don't have it anymore because something's wrong with you. I'm saying, well, that's not really true.
Journey of discovering this for themselves.
There's a lot of mythology out there about performance and about expectations. We have two mentalities that are working within us continuously every moment of our life.
It's like you have this goal, here's how you do it, and then if you can't do it based on how somebody told you you could do it. I'm just going to speak for all of us because, well, that's what I'm doing here. So,
please continue.
I'm going to speak for all of us and say, I previously thought, previous to this conversation, would have thought that like an Olympian, let's just use that in a silo, that an Olympian, does this thing very well, and then they continue to do that thing very well, and they sort of just continue practicing of doing that thing. But what I'm actually kind of hearing is that there's always a personal up-leveling that needs to happen, because even in doing something well, aren't you going to plateau at some point without the personal up-leveling? Like, how do you coach somebody who's the best in the world at something to be better?
Well, it's easy. You just look at what they could do that would improve their performance, and you build it into their preparation. But, we have to consider also that, we have this changing biology, and we also have this different way of looking at things that are hardwired into us that, we are subservient to. We cannot transcend what's biologically hardwired into us. It's not possible. So, again, the diagnosis is always when you have a prolific achiever or anybody that wants to raise their bar, a couple things have to happen. You need to know, first off, what are their skills and capacities taken as a totality. I call that a state of readiness. So the state of readiness is really important to know, because that determines the time and energy and resources to any goal that we would currently have. We really need to know that. And then we need to look at the readiness and say, okay, well, what are the holes in the readiness? You're 95% ready, but you have 5% that you need to figure out. Well, how do you know that? Well, because you told me what you're doing, and I know that there are some things that you haven't done yet. And these are the things that we need to add to what you're doing to tease out more potential that's there that you don't realize that can be added to what you've already got. And so that's how we do it. And then as they start to evolve, they start to think in different ways, and we need to interpret that. And we need to, another thing that's very important here is that we want to make sure that the ambition reach is appropriate for where they are in their development. People, I think, way too often, they talk themselves out of their abilities because they make a goal that's too big because some expert told them, to go for the moonshot, and they can't think moonshot. They can barely think about tomorrow. So the aspiration has to be consistent with what their ability to embrace the possibility is. And as long as you are pacing moving forward their evolution consistent with that, and they're always going to stay in the game, because the aspiration in their mind is like doable, and it's kind of exciting because it's something new, but a little bit scary too. Well, good. Then that's probably the right thing. So that's the thing that we need to keep in mind. And there's, natural points of evolution where people just don't have it anymore to do what they did. And some of that is mentally they've changed. But some people think, well, that's your brain. You don't have it anymore because something's wrong with you. I'm saying, well, that's not really true. There can be a change in how your brain thinks because it's an evolutionary process. It's hardwired, and it's almost like anticipated.
Yeah.
So, again, there's a lot of mythology out there about performance and about expectations, and a lot of it is not healthy, in my opinion. Like, you just don't want it bad enough. If you only tried harder, you could get there. Well, maybe you don't have the skills or the assets or the genes to do it. No amount of effort is going to get you to do something that the capacity isn't there to do. I
Yeah.
just feel like the way that all this is set up is almost it sets people up for failure or just feeling bad because they're
Yeah.
not performing to the standard that everybody else thinks that they should be.
Yeah.
I just, it really bothers me because, that could keep a person small. It could
It,
talk a person out of what they're really great at. It could discourage them so they live a life of desperation, then they start
yeah.
thinking morbid thoughts. They eventually throw in the towel or they anesthetize them with, some addiction of some sort. It's tragic for me.
That's Mike and I agree. Mike and I have been having conversations a lot lately because he's a natural bodybuilder and like
First time
natural,
I saw it, I was
yeah.
like, man.
And he talks a lot about goal hijacking, and he said not everybody has he's knee deep in sports science, and I know that's your thing as well. He's like, not everybody has the body chemistry to be
Right.
these big bodybuilders that you see. And then the bodybuilders will say, well, here's how I became or how I look the way that I look. And then they'll do like some workouts. And Mike's like, that's not the truth. What they're not saying is the different chemicals that they're taking that then make them, not that they're illegal chemicals, but the different chemicals that they're taking that make their body do different things that bypass genetics. But they're not telling people. So then essentially it's goal hijacking, right? It's like you have this goal. Here's how you do it. And then if you can't do it based on how somebody told you could do it, well, that must mean you're wrong.
That's
and
right.
you're the
Right.
failure. And that's
Right.
a mess.
Well, it's a lie. It's a fabrication, but
Yeah.
yet it's very easy for us because, we as humans are psychologically fragile, meaning that our predominant way of looking at life is through our survival reflex. That's always a pessimistic view of things. I mean, quite honestly, people have more confidence in their ability to fail than they do in their ability to win, quite honestly.
Wow.
And that's a survival mechanism that's, again, hardwired into us because psychologically and physically our highest imperative is to survive. But if you're on survival all the time, there's no way you can build your assets and your potential to create your own unique, distinctive contributions to humanity or live your life at the level that you're capable of. It's just not possible. So there are so many points, and that's also biological. We didn't ask for the survival reflex. It just is. Well, you kind of need it in times of imminent danger. Some guy runs a red light in a intersection, and somehow that you're going to get hit, and you turn away faster than you can think. And it was so purposeful, it could not have been deliberate, but you didn't think fast enough to do that. So there's a biology within us that's faster than we can think. Yeah, I know everybody thinks neuroscience is everything. Yeah, it's something, but it's not everything because that's a non-neural response to something that is predictable, that is necessary for psychological or physical survival. So again, we have this other side that I personally think we really need to understand about ourselves so we don't think of ourselves in a way that doesn't represent like what our biology is.
Yeah.
Survival is the highest priority first, but that's biological. But we also have another biology that works side by side with that. We have two mentalities that are working within us continuously every moment of our life for control over our decision making. We have the survival self. That's the one that's always afraid of everything, and it's always looking to avoid and anticipate things to stay safe. But that's not going to get you to develop your full potential. Not going to happen. But the good news is we have another biology here, and that biology is our instincts, that are innately hardwired into us. And our highest instinct, from what all the experts say, I didn't come up with this, is seeking. Wait a minute, I thought procreation was the highest instinct. Nope. Oh, wait a minute, I thought shelter was. Nope. The number one thing that people have agreed on, the brainiacs and all the experts, is that the seeker within us is our highest biologic instinct that is hardwired. So you can see that we're in conflict. I mean, look, we all know this every day. I mean, how many times in a day or a week or in a lifetime do you actually feel calm? Probably not a lot. Maybe a couple times a year you have a couple good moments, but usually there's kind of a life tension. And the life tension is between the survivor self that wants to survive and the seeker self that wants to create a life of value. We're seeking to create meaning. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
The highest need is to be a self-manifest or self-realized. Well, if that's the case, you can see how we're born conflicted because we have these two forces within us that are wrestling for where are we, the human, going to apply our energy and our efforts. And living a natural life is really easy. You just let your survival impulses and your emotions and your intellectual biases control all your thoughts. That's free, but it doesn't lead to a life of value and contribution. It doesn't. To live that level of life, we have to suppress the survivor side, the fear side, and override it with our seeking side to do the actions that allow us to move forward. This has to be pushed into the background because you can't shut this off. And that's another part of my observation and that's another point of biology that we should be mindful of that's with us our entire life. I think we've all had that voice inside your head, like, there you go, dummy, you went and did it again. You should know by now that you shouldn't do that. Well, I'm not so sure, because if it's a survival reflex, you can't really shut that off. You don't have to take action on it, but the impulse to do it, I think that's biologically hardwired. So there are certain things about us that we just need to know that we can give ourselves slack for, but also be mindful of the possibility of it so that when it starts to show up, then we can make the choice not to go along for its ride, but to take another path that takes us towards the creation of a life of value and contribution.
I love that. I love that. And that's essentially like a muscle that the more you flex it, the more you can go to it easier and more quickly instead of jumping to the fear space. Yeah.
Yes, but there is a caveat here, is that, as I mentioned earlier, you never get to a place where anything like this self-perpetuates. It's only as good as it's applied. And that's the reason why people are always drifting back to that place that they don't want to go back to, where they're performing and living a life well below their potential. All the good stuff in life, it has to be applied to be maintained. We have to be vigilant with that. Like, in my own opinion, every day in the morning, there should be some things that we do to prepare ourselves for the day, so that when life's stuff shows up, that we can take the high road and prevail, and our actions can represent the champion side of us, rather than us responding to life through our survival impulses that don't reflect our highest self. And so, again, this idea of biology is really important to me. So when we're talking about, the Olympic athlete, I just look at Olympic athletes. I mean, you too, they're like Olympic athletes, preparing for a world tour. We, as a parent that nobody knows about, hey, we got to be an Olympic athlete. The sleepless nights, the kids said that they were going to come home, but yet they didn't. Oh, I forgot. Oh, yeah, here you are 6 hours later. Thanks a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you kind of do have to be an Olympian in life. And to do that, you have to really learn to conserve energy. And we conserve energy by understanding our biology and understanding what we're responsible for and what we're not. And I just feel like people are trying to cover way too many bases, and they're condemning themselves for thinking that they should be thinking something different at their age, and they should be somewhere, and I'm not so sure that that's really true. There's just something about life that, in my opinion, needs to get worked out, not as a capitulation or a downgrading a possibility, but a reality of what the experience really is. That's what I do with the clients. Yeah.
Yeah. I've noticed that. I've noticed it in my own life. Like, I wasn't really successful until my late 30s. And I could have looked at that like, man, I missed out on so many years. But man, I had volumes of experience that led me to where I was through those years. It wouldn't have happened the same any earlier. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, I see that in other people's
Mm-hmm.
lives. And then I see people who haven't, in their opinion, haven't made it or haven't hit yet.
Mm-hmm.
But then I look at their lives and I'm like, but you've got blessings on blessings on blessings right now. Like, I wish you could see what you're going through right now and
Mm-hmm.
understand that when you make it, that's really only one piece of like the well-roundedness of your life. Does that make
Yes.
sense? The
Yes.
making it really isn't that important. The one thing most people would say, like
Yeah.
you know,
I mean,
you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Am I
I
being
do. I do. It's
clear?
like, I mean, your average person thinks that if I had $1 million, I wouldn't have a care in the world, you know? And, most people aren't going to make that in a lifetime. So they still think that that's what it is. But, if you talk with people that do, they know that that's not necessarily true. It's ultimately about us. I mean, I think that obviously living well is an important side of this, and that's not the topic. That's not what I want to say here is that a lot of the things that we believe as the standards that we look towards to give us a scorecard for how successfully we're living life, I think they're inaccurate, and they set us up for a lot of disappointment. They keep us in a state of inferiority and always feeling less than and feeling like, gosh, if I were only better, I'd be able to catch up and have a perfect life like everybody else around me. And I'm just saying that that's really not true. I think there's a broader conversation
Yeah.
that has to be had that's not a downgrading of the human experience, but it looks at it through the eyes of design and how we should pace ourselves through life, where we should be putting our time and energy to be a producer of our best work, to have that as the purpose by which we get up each and every day.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, all of those things are doable, but there's not been the level of conversation, in my opinion, that this subject matter deserves. It's all about trying harder, wanting it bad enough. If you dream big enough, it's going to happen. I mean, a lot of that stuff, it can't deliver on what has to go right because
Yeah.
it doesn't provide what's required to be able to evolve over a lifetime. There's a whole other conversation that needs to be had on that, in my opinion.
Yeah. Agreed. Oh my gosh. Well, Jeff, I'm going to have you because I feel like we could talk all day. I'm
Let's
going
do
to
that
have to
sometime.
have you back sometime if that's
I would
okay.
love that.
Also, Peanut just keeps coming up
I
and
love
down, and
Peanut, man.
he's just
I mean, he couldn't be happier.
he's
He'd love us to
he's
go on for
good.
hours just sitting and
Yeah.
be loved, man. That dog is not suffering.
He is not. He is not. Oh my word. Yes, we're talking about you, mister. But okay, so A, I'm going to have you back and we're going to talk more about this.
Would
But
love that.
B, I know that you have something for the people that are listening to help them just with their own journey of discovering this for themselves. You want to talk more about that?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking when we talked before we began the podcast here that I have an internal document that I've created. I mean, it's just simply a Google Doc, and there are a couple of videos that go along with this that are all about this topic about how do you create a full potential player? Because that's basically what I do, like with my clients and the people that I work with that are part of what I do in servicing other people. This is a conversation, and if anybody would like a copy of that internal document, here's the way you do it. Super simple. Let's make this super simple. Just text me, and I'm going to give you my personal cell phone number here because I know you're not going to abuse it. And I want you to text me, and in the subject line, just put Martha, and then put your name next to Martha's so I know the source that the text came from. And what I'll do, I will text you back with the Google Doc on what and how I see the full potential players like created. I think you get immense value out of this. It only took me 60 years to figure this out. So, got a couple of videos that go along with that, but I think this would really demystify for you what the process really is. I think people make it way too complicated, make it unattainable to us. And Martha, that would just be my pleasure. So let me give you the phone number. My personal phone number is 626-590-8428. 626-590-8428. That'll be the text number. Just put Martha and then your name next to it. I'll know that you heard about this thing that we're talking about on the podcast here, and I'd be more than happy to send this to you. Take a look at it and look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thanks again, Martha, for the great opportunity. It's just a delightful conversation.
Of course. This has been fantastic. You just lit up my whole day, as you always do. Again, that number, you guys, is 626-590-8428. It's also going to be in the show notes or in the caption, wherever you're seeing this or listening to this. So if you're like, shoot, Martha, I'm driving, don't write it down while you're driving. It will be there for you in show notes. You will see it there whenever it's done. So you guys, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you coming on. We're going to have you on again. You're just always such a delight. So thank you so much.
Back at you. All right. Big love. See ya.
Awesome.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.